Hey, it's Andrew back here at BTORange in Conroe, Texas, and today on the table the Winchester Model 100. We've already done the Model 88, the lever action rifle that predates this gun by just a few years, but finally we got a good example of a somewhat unusual Model 100. Unusual in that it's not a 308. So a little bit of the history of this gun. This gun debuted in 1961. It was the third in a series of guns with the same overall design. The Winchester 88, which we've already done a video on, the lever action gun, and the Winchester Model 77, which was a 22 semi-auto with the same basic stock design and overall look. Both of those guns debuted in 1955, 6 years earlier than this gun. So this gun was brought out in 308 and 243, and then in 1963, the 284 Winchester came out in this rifle as well. They did that for a reason. We'll get there in just a second. The vast majority of these guns were in 308. So there were two versions of the gun available. This is a standard rifle, 22-inch barrel rifle. And they also, from 1967 until the gun was discontinued in 73, there was a carbine version with a 19-inch barrel and an uncheckered stock, and it had a barrel band right here. And we've got, I believe, if I did my homework correctly, I believe we have pictures of this we can insert into the video. So the carbine was available for just those 6 years, from 67 to 73, so it's a little bit rarer. So numbers fluctuate. I think the exact number this far as units produced that we see most often is 262,838 of this particular model produced in a combination of the carbine and the rifle across all three calibers. And I've had some questions about what notes I'm looking at, and it's notes that I just make as before we come do the video, and I write them in cursive so that I'm the only one in the organization that can read them. So it's old man code, boomer code, I guess. Anyway, so this gun came out in 61. So Remington had a semi-automatic centerfire gun in production at the time, the 740, then the 742 with the two-piece stock. And so Winchester tried to make the most of the fact this had a one-piece stock and tried to highlight the differences in the two guns in their advertising, but they didn't advertise their gun nearly as well and didn't market it nearly as well as Remington marketed their particular line of semi-auto. So it kind of, plus there was a bit of a price difference as well. Maybe the other big difference as to why the 100 didn't do as well as the 740/742 is that they never chambered this gun in any long-action calibers. 30-06 didn't happen in this gun, and it was the most popular caliber in the 742. So there are a few reasons why this rifle, which I personally think is a better looking rifle than the 742, it does have some of the same maintenance issues, I guess, that the Remington product does, and we'll get there also. So 1964, famously in Winchester history, was a significant year where they took deliberate steps across their entire product line just about to reduce production costs in order for their product to remain competitive at the retail market. And today, most collectors, I don't know, most is an operative word, probably all collectors would seem to agree that the pre-64 Winchesters are more desirable than post-64. But fortunately, on the Model 100 and by extension the 88, which we talked about in that other video, was spared a whole lot of changes except for the stock. So this is a pre-64. This is a 1962 gun by serial number. And it's chambered in 243 Winchester, which is what makes it just a little, I don't want to say unusual, but I don't have the exact caliber breakdown, but I am fairly certain that 70% of the rifles were in 308, and then maybe 20% in 243, and then maybe 10% in 284 across the production line. So 243 is somewhat harder to encounter, but they do exist out there. I mean, obviously here's one, right? So it's got the cut checkering on the good walnut stock. It's got the Winchester butt plate, hasn't been cut for a path, which is a good thing. And it's just a good, solid, standard rifle. It is missing the front sight hood. This would have come with a front sight hood on it. Those are available, and that could be replaced fairly easily. But a couple other changes occurred in 68. Well, one significant change occurred in 68 is the appearance of a letter suffix on the serial number, and the A alpha would be a post 68 gun. A lot of people see the alpha guns as the definition of a post 64 gun. It's not a post 68 gun. So there are post 64 guns without alpha characters in the serial number. Now, one thing to remember is that the stocks interchange. I could take this barreled action out of this stock and put it into a post 64 stock, or vice versa, take a post 64 gun and put it in a pre 64 stock. And unscrupulous people would try to sell it as a pre 64 gun. So when you're evaluating one of these Winchester 100s with the pre 64 style stock, just look at that serial number. Those charts are available out there. Make sure that that stock hasn't been replaced. So you cannot change a stock between a Winchester 100 and a Winchester 88. The inletting on the inside is different to accommodate the lever on the 88. So those stocks will not interchange between models. There are quite a few parts that do interchange between the 100 and the 88, because once this gun was introduced in 61, some of the design changes that came about, such as the dual extractors that we have in this gun, and dual ejectors and the larger extractor, they were incorporated into the Model 88 production as well. So one other difference in the 100 and the 88 is that the Model 88 was chambered in 358 Winchester. The Model 100 was never chambered in 358 Winchester from the factory. Now, having said that, I have seen at least two Winchester 100s that were chambered in 358 Winchester, but they were not done at the factory. That would be a rebore and just reboring the barrel, recutting the chamber to 358, and then people had taken an 8 overstamp or a 5 overstamp and overstamped the 0 on the 308 caliber marking. And again, unscrupulous buyers would try to sell that as a rare, one-of-a-kind, ultra hen's tooth Winchester 100. But if you take a very close look at that caliber stamp, you'll see that it's an overstamp, where they've overstamped that 0 into a 5. And Winchester wouldn't have needed to do that. They had the ability, and there probably were some prototype guns made in 358. They were never released to the public. They were never for sale. So I don't know that there are any. There may be one or two in private collector hands somewhere, but as far as finding one offered for sale at your local gun show, I'm going to say no. It's a fake unless it's absolutely 100% proven otherwise. If you find one of these in 358, hopefully you don't. So replacement barrels were another issue on the 100, just as they were with an 88. Winchester did not like to rebarrel these guns. They were more prone to replace the entire thing, just from the manner in how this was constructed. The barrels were threaded into the receiver, and that's another difference with the Remington 742. The 742 is kind of a slip fit into the receiver like a shotgun barrel, and then there's a large nut right about here on the underside that kind of snugs it into the front of the receiver. This is threaded in like a bolt action rifle barrel, and then once it's threaded in, the gas system is built into it, and then the roll stamps are done and the gun's finished. So rebarreling one of these things would be probably as labor intensive as replacing or more labor intensive than replacing the unit. So One of the other differences in the 100 and the 88, and one of the complaints that people had about the Winchester 100 is the bolt lock open feature. There's no manual lock open feature. There's no manual bolt release, but the gun does lock open on the last shot if it has a Model 100 magazine in it. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So, and it gives us the opportunity to clear the gun out. So I'm going to lock the bolt back. The gun locks back on an empty chamber, right? So what it's doing is it's locking back on the follower. So now to release the magazine, you either can't release the magazine because it's held back by this ledge and it's pushing the magazine forward, or you have the problem where the bolt closes, you have to reload and then go through all the iteration of loading the mags again. Now it's a 4-round mag, except for the 284, which is a 3-round mag because of the larger case diameter. But some folks try to make it fit 5. And when you do that, you tend to bulge out these magazines. And this is an original Winchester magazine, at least $100 when you find these, at least. You can make the gun run 5, and you load 4, load the chamber, top the magazine off, put the magazine back in if you just feel the absolute need to do that. Now, you can't do it in 284, but you can in 243 and 308. So the difference between this magazine and a Model 88 magazine is this ledge here on the back of the 100 magazine is squared off to catch the bolt when the mag is empty. That's what holds the bolt to the rear, and the 88 has a sloped rear face because there's no need to hold the lever open mechanically. You can just open the lever whenever you want to. So probably the biggest feeding issue that we run into with 100s is magazine related. And they changed them up quite a bit. Before, from 55 to 61, before this gun was introduced, but the 88 was in production, there were at least 2 different magazine changes, configurations, and geometry at the feed lips. And then after 61, there were 2, mainly dealing with the 284 Winchester cartridge, and and in the Model 88, the 358 Winchester cartridge. So the 243 and 308 in the 100 use the same magazine, no difference. The 284, the magazine lips have different geometry to them. They're much shorter because of the how the case body, the cartridge case body is shaped. So you will find, the 284 magazines will be marked 284 on them, and you would have to. I would be surprised if you would get the gun to run out of a 243 or 308 mag if you have a 284 caliber gun in the Winchester 100. So a few other problems that you can have with this gun, and I'm not going to take it apart. Now, taking it apart is a bit tricky. It's not really a DIY project. The screw here has to be removed, screw here has to be removed. In order to pull the barrel action out of the stock, you have to pull the bolt all the way to the rear, and then it'll come out this way. It hooks into this recoil block right here. There's a ledge that hooks into this recoil block. So where most people have a problem with it is they don't realize they have to pull that bolt back. You have to pull the bolt back to clear the bars, the action bars on the inside, down out of the wood of the forend. And then people will actually, the stock is relatively fragile because of this big hole cut out in it right here. And people will attempt to force the gun either open or force the metal out of the wood or force it back into the wood without having everything in the correct place and end up cracking a stock. So never a good plan. And the stocks on these can be almost as expensive as the rifle. And it doesn't seem to matter whether it's a post or a pre-64 stock. They're still several $100s when you find one, a good one. So that said, we did talk about the little bit of a difference in the in the stock checkering, the post 64 guns had a different grade of walnut. It was lighter in color. I've never seen one quite as dark as the pre 64s, and it was an impressed basket weave pattern that you see on those older guns. But other than that, the mechanism, the bluing, and all of that is the same between the pre and the post 64 guns. So some other issues that can cause a problem with the gas system is the original guns have carbon steel gas system parts, and if the piston because of neglect, if the piston is allowed to rust inside the gas cylinder, then it's going to be very hard to pull the bolt to the rear in order to take the gun apart to clean it. So if that happens, then there's got to be some heroic efforts made to try to get your gun apart to fix the problem. So that is an issue with the design. And it does lead me to point out that if you are owning and using a 100 for hunting or anywhere where it's going to be out potentially in wet environments, you should probably have that gun taken down and cleaned, have the gas system cleaned, piston removed, all that stuff cleaned out annually. It's as important as with the 742. Obviously, you can't get to the chamber on this gun for the same reason you can't get to it on a 742. So you can lock the bolt back and use a bore snake, and that's probably, or an angled chamber brush, and I really suggest you use that. Now, the extractor on this gun is much beefier than on 740 or 742, so you don't have quite the same issue that the Remington product does, and you have the dual ejectors in these guns, or at least in all of the Winchester 100s. So it doesn't quite have that same problem as the Remington does, but it has a set of problems all its own. And probably the most famous one, well, the first 2 years of this gun, from 61 to 63, there was a trigger lock to prevent the gun from doubling, but it was completely unnecessary. And in fact, Winchester sent out a memo to all of its repair houses around the country that when a Winchester 100 came in for any kind of work, they could just remove those extra parts that they weren't needed in the design. So if you still have it, don't worry about it. It's not hurting anything. You'll probably get a better trigger pull if you take it out, but it's not harming anything. So, but the big thing is, now remember, this gun was discontinued in 73. 17 years later, in 1990, the Olin Corporation, now this Winchester was a different Winchester. It was U.S. Repeating Arms Company. They didn't make this gun. The Olin Corporation did. So the Olin Corporation determined that it was possible for the firing pin, the old style firing pin in this gun, to break. And it was potentially possible, and it probably happened a couple of times, and what led to this, for the firing pin to be lodged forward through the bolt face and cause an out-of-battery discharge or a slam fire. And Winchester issued, they didn't say it was a recall. I think they called it an advisory warning, so that they redesigned the firing pin. And we've got a still photo of the new style firing pin. The old one was completely round, lathe turned completely round. The other one has a flat so that it doesn't rotate. And it retrofits into the bolt. There are no other parts change needed other than the firing pin guide. But they originally wanted people to return their 100s at your shipping cost to one of three, to Bolsa Gunsmithing in California, Frank Lefevre up in New York, or New Line Guns in Missouri, and they would replace that firing pin assembly with the new parts. And they also allowed other shops to do it, and Olin would supply the parts. So, and we've done several, and in fact, this one has had the recall work done on it, or the advisory work, or whatever you want to call it. And one way to determine if that work has been done, and those 3 Winchester sponsored shops or Winchester official shops would stamp the underside of the bolt with either a B for Bolsa or an L for Lefevre or an N for Newline, and they'd stamp it on the bottom of the bolt so that would be visible with the magazine removed, right? So, and then there was an X for everybody else, and that information didn't quite get out to as many people as were doing the work. So there are going to be quite a few guns out there. In fact, most of them that don't have any markings at all. So if that's the case, you have to pull the metal out of the wood. You have to take the trigger guard off of the gun to get to the bolt. And if you can, once you get to the rear of the bolt, if you can turn it all the way, then it's an old style bolt because it's completely round. And that's the one that needs to be replaced. And Olin still supports that. But what we have to do is we have to take the old one out, send the old firing pin to Olin Corp, and they will send us the new parts. And they used to send us a check. They used to send a check to kind of pay for us doing it, but I think the check was like $15 or $25 or something like that. And it's hard for us to really even justify turning a screw anymore for that kind of money. But anyway, be that as it may, we typically, we've done a few of them. And in fact, I don't know that I've ever had a used Winchester 100 come to me that we haven't had to do it. I mean, they've almost all had the old style firing pins in them. So I don't know. I don't have the statistics on how many were replaced or how many weren't replaced. But any decent gun shop can do it. Any decent actual gunsmith that knows how to work on guns that actually have walnut and steel should be able to handle it for you. It's not difficult. There's just a few tricks on reassembly on the 100. So let's talk real quick about magazines. So the magazines, they don't exist anymore, really. I mean, original ones. And they are getting very, very pricey when you find them. So they are being remade in 2 different ways. So a company called Wisner's, W-I-S-N-E-R'-S, Wisner's Inc., is a machine shop that specializes in making old obsolete gun parts. They make them from drawings, and they buy the original tooling from manufacturers on obsolete products. And they bought the tooling to make these Winchester magazines. And they still have some of the original floor plates, and they can assemble them. And they're not pressing the mags. I mean, they've got the tooling housed off-site. And they're having the magazine bodies pressed, and then they do the assembly work and the finish work at their shop up in the Pacific Northwest. And that is as close to an original magazine as you're going to get. It's done on the Winchester tooling to the Winchester specs. They do have some. I went on their website this morning. They still do have some advertised with this Winchester logo on the bottom of it. Otherwise, it'll have just a capital W with an underscore. That would indicate that it is a Wisner's manufacturing magazine, and you can get those from Wisner's, and you can get them from other locations. Jack First Inc. has the Wisner's manufacturing magazines on their website now also. And you can get them in 308/243, and you can get them in 284. So, and the follower is different as well on a 284 because the case diameter is different. So there is another gun parts company up in the northeastern United States. I won't say the name, but they bought Wisner's magazines, and they kind of reverse engineered them and sent them off and are having them made overseas. And this is one of those magazines that came with the gun. So the biggest difference is obviously we have no markings on the bottom at all. The black oxide finish is much coarser. It's kind of blasted, and this follower, even though it is a M100 marked follower, it is a cast follower that is black oxide blued. It's not the cast aluminum follower that is on this one. So I'm not saying don't use this magazine. I will say it's at least as expensive as a Wisner's / Jack First magazine. So if you were going to choose one, choose that. If this is the only one you can get, then it's better than not having any magazine at all. So what would you expect to pay for these? Well, pre and post 64 make a difference, and caliber makes an enormous difference. And carbine versus rifle makes a difference. They made fewer carbines, so assuming high original condition, it's always about condition, originality, scarcity, and condition, right? Those same three things. So originality, we've always talked about. Cutting these and putting a pad on them really hurts the resale value on these 100s. Obviously, any stock swapping is an issue. The front side hood is a bit of a minor issue. I'm not terribly worried about that. So I don't know. I haven't really seen many of these that were safe queens. People bought them to hunt with, and they hunted with them. So these little nicks and this type of stuff that you see, I'm not overly concerned about that as long as there's no cracks through this forend. Because when people put them together wrong and they crack, they're going to crack from this magazine well forward or from the magazine well out. And if someone has tried to glue that and put that back together, unless they're super good, I mean, then it'll be obvious, and the stock will be refinished anyway. So watch out for cracked wood on these guns as well. So pre-64 guns, the money's in the 284 because there's only 1 year. The cartridge came out in 63. So a true pre-64 284 is every drop of 1100, maybe even up to 1300 or a touch more. When you find them, I've seen several advertised out there, and I've seen several hammer prices on auctions in that $1,100 range. And then you go down to the 308, the most common caliber by far in the pre-64 guns, and then it's around a $700 gun. So the 243 falls in between there, and to me this is a $900 retail gun all day long, and that's a pretty good spot for that gun to live in 243. So the post-64 guns there's a lot more of them, so they don't bring quite as much money. So a 308 in excellent condition in post-64 guns is probably a $500 gun. And then you can extrapolate up from there. So in any event, it's a decent gun. Winchester claims more accuracy out of this gun because of the screwed-in barrel than the Remington 742. I don't know that anybody that's shooting, that the typical person shooting these guns isn't going to notice the difference in the deer woods. These are not. If I was going someplace where I knew I was going to have to take a 350, 400 yard shot, I wouldn't take either a 742 or a Winchester 88 or anything. So that's not the purpose. The purpose is the deer woods, the white-tailed deer hunters, in typical places where the shots are 200 yards or less. I mean, here in Texas, we have people coming in the store wanting a rifle that is capable of 500 or 600 yards. That's fine, and we'll sell them that rifle and scope, put it together for them, and then they climb up in their deer stand, which is 72 yards from their feeder. I've never understood that. I mean, great, 100%. I'm glad they do it, but I mean, this would do the job just as well and probably be a classier rifle doing it, just my opinion. So anyway, that's the Winchester 100. Another Winchester design that just did not survive the aggressive marketing of Big Green Remington. So if you like what we're doing, hit that like button, let us know. Throw a comment out there. We respond to them as we can. We've got quite a few videos up, and you guys are watching them, and we really, really appreciate it. I can't tell you that I've said it before. I'm just thoroughly surprised that people watch me ramble on about stuff like this, but I'm glad you do. Hit the bell thing that tells you when we post new videos. We try to do it every week as best we can. So bear in mind also, we also buy estates, we also buy collections, and we travel to do it. We have no problem hopping in the old truck and heading to parts unknown to buy firearms and bring cash money. So check our website, check out Big Tech's Ordnance website, and we'll see you on the next one.